Good evening, and thank you for joining us for tonight's Fireside Chat. I'm going to allow few more seconds for folks to join the room. I am Donald Nisbet, retired Navy captain, and the leader of the Transition Assistance Team. NNOA veterans volunteer on the Transition Assistance Team and offer a plethora of experiences in nonprofit, profit, government, entrepreneurship, and academia. We're fortunate to have senior executives from a variety of professional backgrounds who have volunteered to share their experiences and advice in support of NNOA members facing transition. Leaving the military can be an incredibly intimidating experience, especially if service is all you've known for most of your adult life. Knowing what obstacles lie ahead can help you avoid pitfalls and manage expectations. Tonight, we're honored to have Neville Welch. I'm going to turn it over to retired Marine Corps Colonel Austin DeHady to give you his intro and bio. Over to you, Oz.
All right. Good evening, everyone. As Donald said, my name is Austin DeHady. I retired from the Marine Corps as a colonel in 2017. Tonight, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce this friend, fellow warrior, distinguished scholar, shipmate, Neville Welch. I'm going to run down his bio. You may have seen his bio as part of the read ahead information, but I'm going to go ahead and cover some highlights. Neville hails from Georgetown, Guyana, and he emigrated to the United States in 1989. He landed in Brooklyn, New York. Similarly, with many of us, first or second generation immigrants. He then graduated from Howard University in 2001 with a Bachelor of Science in Health Sciences. Also in that year, in November 2001, he enlisted into the Marine Corps. Shortly thereafter, in 2002, he completed the School of Infantry, and in 2004, he reported to Officer Candidate School. After graduating OCS, and in 2005, after the basic school, he graduated Financial Management Officers course. And as a side hobby, he completed the Scout Sniper Platoon Commanders course. He then completed his Expeditionary Warfare school and also got his MBA along the way. He is currently working on his PhD in Organizational Artificial Intelligence, which I'm really excited to hear about if he mentions much of that this evening. And after the tour at OCS, he also performed as an academic instructor and platoon commander, as well as a company XO. Neville also has been a congressional fellow to Congressman Tim Ryan of Ohio. He then moved over to headquarters Marine Corps Programs and Resources, where he was a fiscal control and financial systems officer. I met Neville at the Marine Forces Cyberspace Command when he was there as a budget officer. He has performed his duties at a number of commands to include Marine Corps Installations, MNRA, Department of Navy Appropriation Matters, the Navy's Financial Management Operations Directorate. He was also the controller at Training and Education Command, as well as the controller at Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point. Neville retired in August of 2022, and today he is the CEO of his own company. And Neville, correct me, please, if I get this pronunciation wrong, but Lemus Consulting.
Oh, that is perfect.
And ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my good friend, Neville Welch.
Austin, thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate you. I'm going to let my son, Neville Jr., know how you feel about him and all the wonderful things that you had to say about him this evening, Austin. Again, Austin and Donald and those of you assembled here, the entire NNOA Transition Assistant Team, thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this evening. I don't take that for granted in any way, shape, and form. I'm also grateful for the opportunity to share my story regarding and related to my transition. More especially, thank you, and thank you for making transition assistance a priority. For those of us that have gone through transition from the military, we do know how important it is to have a conversation about transition, that conversation that we hoped we or someone had taken sufficient interest in us to have. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want you to know how grateful I am. Like everything else, we've always begin with a frame or a vantage point for the things that we do. And transition assistant or transition is no different than that. There are two ways in which you can think about leaving the military. You can think about it as your transition, or you can think about it as your reintegration into the society that you've always been a part of, or you were a part of before you went to the military. Transition academically is synonymous with PCS and PCA. In other words, it is what you do when you leave one organization for another within the military. By definition, that is transition. Whereas reintegration is an intentional process for resuming civilian, non-military roles following the completion of your military service. That is reintegration. That is the vantage point through which I think about leaving the military. But for simplicity's sake, and for tonight's purpose, I will use transition and reintegration interchangeably, but I wanted to make that different, that distinction right up front, so you know how I think about it and how I would encourage you to think about your departure from the military whenever that time comes. Reintegration, as I said before, is the intentional process, the physical, psychological, intentional process for resuming your civilian and non-military roles after you have completed your military service. Transition is really about reintegration. It's about your health, and it is about the health of your family as a whole. Okay. So right up front, I have to tell you that my transition affected me principally in three major categories. At least I had to think about my transition in three major categories. The first is mentally and psychologically. Anyone who is knowledgeable about transition will tell you that transition, for the most part, is a psychological process. It is one where you have to experience the loneliness, the privacy, the quiet contemplations between your ears and at the back of your eyes. But when you do that, when you engage in the psychological, mental reflections about what your career meant, those events and activities that are part of that experience for you, you will be engaging in or emerged from a process of self-discovery as a consequence of your reflection. Now, your self-discovery will cause you to go down one of two paths, primarily. One is reinvention, the other is reintegration. And here is what I mean by that, and this was true for me. Reinvention is the process that allows you to begin something that is radically different than what you did while you were in the military. It is your exploration as you leave the military behind and you start something anew, something radically different than what you did. Let's say, for example, you were an MP, and after you leave the military, you decide, you know what, I don't want to do anything related to military police. I want to get into cyber, or I want to go into accounting, or I want to get an MBA and do something radically different. You have nothing to lose. You're engaging in exploration. You learn new things. The alternative to that is reintegration. In other words, you reflect on those things that you've neglected in your early 20s. You know, you wanted to accomplish, you wanted to do a Tour de France, you wanted to run an Ironman, you wanted to, you know, do things that you neglected, you tabled until now. And now that you're leaving the military, you decide that, okay, I will reintegrate those things into my personhood, into my vision for myself, into my plan for my future. So those are really categorically the two things that emerge out of your self-discovery. Some people may add that you may also engage in self-love. Some of us may have neglected ourselves and our families for the past 20, 30 years. And out of that self-discovery, we may engage in self-love and come up with an entire plan for how we might do that. Maybe we'll go and do a rivet cruise in Europe once a month for the next 3 years, or whatever it might be for you. The other variable that I had to confront was the physical variable. You know as much as I do that in the military, physical prowess or physical activity more so is a constant, at least 6 hours a week, 3 times a week, and so forth and so forth. So the more senior you are, the more you're able to do that at your leisure. But nonetheless, physical activity is an ethic in the military. It is a value in the military. After you retire, your physical activity has the tendency to diminish, because there is no one that says you have to show up at this particular location at this particular time. You're not necessarily showing up in the office in PT gear because you want to give your subordinates the impression, or you wanted to make clear to them that you still value those things, that you expect them to embrace. So in the absence of anyone or any forcing function, the tendency is for physical activity to diminish. As a retiree or someone thinking about retiring, you also have to think about how are you going to integrate physical activity into your new life, and to what extent. I am not suggesting to you that you need to get membership at Gold's Gym or One Life Fitness or any place where, you know, the activity might be characterized as strenuous. That is not the point. The point is, in the literature, it is a fact that retirees who engage in diminished physical activity are at risk, higher risk, at least 40 to 50% higher risk of suffering from clinical depression. So physical activity is a critical component of your retirement vision. As you think about that transition, try to contemplate how are you going to bake that into your cake. The last thing I would tell you is socially, you also have to give some thought to the social impact of your retirement. In the work environment, be it, you know, the military or wherever you are in the military, the office, the building often function as a social environment for you. You're there 5 days a week for the most part. In general, you're there from 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning until about 1600 or so in the afternoon. So you are literally in a social construct at work. As you think about retirement, you also have to think about what the new social context for yourself is going to look like. If you're thinking about starting a business, maybe the local chamber of commerce may be a social venue where you can reconstruct a social environment for yourself. If you're thinking about teaching, maybe the university or the college that you're associated with, assuming that it's in person, you may certainly be able to recreate that social dynamic that every human being thrives on. So I don't want to get into the minutia of some of these things, but at least categorically, just let you know how my transition categorically, those big rocks that I've had to contemplate. Okay, so we're transitioning into the psychology of transition. Transition begins with an ending. Something has to end in order for us to transition. And as you, in uniform, are forecasting the end of your military service, it is perfectly legitimate for you to begin the process of your transition psychologically and to some extent physically by reassessing where you spend your off-duty time. Are you putting a leg in those places that you may have an interest in? Are you reconfiguring your social matrix? The psychology of transition also indicates that uncertainty is a feature of transition. Renewal is a characteristic of transition. Creativity, innovation, self-doubt, depression, all those things are part of the transition experience. Construction, deconstruction. Construction meaning you're going to do this privately, and with your trusted agent, you may very well do this in public as well too, but you're going to engage in activity to construct the last 20, 25, 30 years of your life. What exactly did I undergo? How should I think about it? How should I put that away in my box or put it on my wall? You're going to engage in these things. You're going to engage in what we refer to as sense making. You're also going to experience something that we refer to as the meanwhile. The meanwhile is part of your transition, where in the privacy of your mind, you're going to potentially experience doubt. You may spend time thinking about those not so pleasant experiences. And I would encourage you, as I had to encourage myself and I was encouraged, don't let those not so pleasant memories of your experience consume you. If you allow them to, they can mark the onset of some deeper issues, destructive behaviors, to name a few, that you may be exposed to or have the propensity to engage in. So you have to find those positive affirmations. You have to find ways to engage and repel those thoughts that might come into your mind, trying to take you down the path of being unhealthy in your thoughts and in private. So I want to share three things with you. You're going to engage in a process of construction where you will try to put your tenure in the military into some kind of context. And you're also going to engage in a process called deconstruction, where you will begin to pick it apart. You may also tap into one of your trusted agents, your sponsors, or your mentors, or whomever you have, and you and them may very well engage in trying to deconstruct, trying to make sense of what you experience. And then you may transition into reconstruction. How should I really think of my time in the military? That's where you want to be. You want to get to the place where you are co-creating your future self, informed by your previous self. Extract the value that you've acquired over the decades and let that inform you of your future self, whether it's your future self that is revolutionary or a future self that is evolutionary. At the basement of those things that I've mentioned lies your values and your beliefs. You are going to be required, my friends, to give some serious thought to your values. Over the past 20-something years, you had assembled and embraced a certain set of values that enabled you to get from enlistment or commission to the place where you are now thinking about retirement. In the Marine Corps is honor, courage, and commitment, and some other things that we've structured for ourselves, like balance, fairness, and those type of things. But as a retiree, potential retiree, aspiring retiree, you're going to need to go back and take a look at your values. And here is why. The values that got you from point A to point B aren't necessarily the same set of values that will get you from point B to point C. And right beneath your values, the pillars that support your values are your beliefs. There's some people who would tell you they value education, but they don't believe women should be educated to the extent that men should be educated. So in as much as values are important, beliefs are even more important. And the future that you want to have for yourself will be predicated on your beliefs. Go back into your beliefs. Go back into the set of things that constitute your values and examine those to see whether or not you have the right arrangement for the future you envisioned for yourself. I use the word envision because I don't believe you need to have a plan. As you begin your transition or you start thinking about your transition, it is not normal to have a detailed plan. You certainly are entitled to and should have a vision for where you might want to be. But the details and the subsequent plan to support the vision may not be flushed out, and that is not peculiar to you. That is very characteristic of individuals finding themselves in the position that you are in, facing a transition. Another thing that you may need to contemplate is loneliness. I mentioned to you that your social context will change. You're not going to have all of your subordinates and peers and their peers stopping by the office every day. Your spouse may still be in the workforce and he or she may get up every morning and still go to work. Your children may have left the home. And after your spouse leaves, it's just you. Get up, go take a walk, develop a routine of getting fresh air. You remember we talk about that physical activity and the role that that plays in your mental health and your outlook for the future. Develop a miniature battle rhythm. It doesn't have to be comparable to what you have been accustomed to for the past 20 or 30 years. In no way, shape, and form is that a requirement. But get some fresh air in your lungs and pay attention to your alcohol consumption. It can contribute to you feeling depressed and make some very simple tasks much more daunting. So be mindful of that. And oh, by the way, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you to get help if you think you need help. Find someone to talk to. Develop a battle rhythm where you give someone a call maybe every Tuesday or Wednesday or at 10 o'clock every morning or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so that if you don't, you have someone that would check in on you, knowing that there's been a deviation from what the standard has come for what the standard has is. But let people know what they can expect from you. If you need help brainstorming the future, we are here to help you with that. That is what we do. I think a logical question would be, hey, Neville, how soon should I begin my transition planning? And I will tell you from a heart of experience, it should be at minimum 2 PCAs or 2 PCSs from your transition. And here is why. You need time to think about the future. You need time to relinquish those things that could be impediments to a more meaningful and fulfilling life after military service. You need time to visualize. You need time to gain alignment between that future self and the rest of the world. Maybe your future self involves getting certification. Maybe your future self involves getting membership to an organization of a certain kind that might require time. Maybe your future self you envision being in a certain geographical location, and you want to be there. Maybe your future self involves your spouse or your children being in a certain geographic location. So give yourself, if you're able to, 2 PCSs or 2 PCAs of planning time. That's really about 5 years or so. That is very, very, very short time. So you can cultivate those relationships that you need to cultivate. And equally important to that is so you can begin the process of unlearning. unlearning is a critical function of transitioning. Not only do you have to unlearn, but you also have to relearn. And the process of unlearning and relearning takes time, depending on how much and what you have to unlearn, and equally important, how much and what you have to learn. So take the time to do that, and think about your spouse and your children and the lead time that they may require as you and them as a family anticipate your transition. Make sure their needs, their aspirations are included in your vision for the future. Now, as you think about transition from a heart of experience, I also want to encourage you to think about documentation. When you cross the threshold of the military, things change. And if you don't get your documentation right before you leave the service, it certainly can be regrettable. The bureaucracy associated with getting your documentation correct and wholesome after you left the service certainly can be disappointing. So to prevent yourself from undergoing and experiencing the disappointment, the bureaucracy, I would highly encourage you to confer with someone or a group of people who have gone this way before and are able to advise you on how important it is to get your documentation right. For example, your deployment dates. Go through your service record and make sure those dates are correct. If there are changes that need to be made, it is easy today or easier today for you to go into your administrative offices or office and engage with those professionals to get that done than it is to go through the bureaucracy associated with getting a date change in your record. So take the time and pay attention to the details. It certainly will affect you in a very unpleasant way and your family if you were to negate the details in your documents today. Your medical and dental records, those things are very important. If you've gone outside of your MTF, your military treatment facility, to receive care, make sure you get those medical records and include them in your medical and dental records. Wherever you have gone, do it for yourself and your family and bring those records into your record book. What else? Pay attention to the details. I can't tell you how important that is enough. Pay attention to the details. You can get a copy of your medical record today. Go through your medical records. Go through your dental records. Go through your service records and make sure those dates, those events, those things that are important to you, those things that you have done, your badges, your awards, go through those things and make sure those things are correct. They will serve you well and you will never regret doing so. I'm almost done, but if you have a question, please let me know. Now, I really don't intend to talk to you extensively about whether or not you're going to have money, enough money after retirement, because those things, enough money is a very subjective variable and it's contingent on a variety of factors that we don't have the time and space to think about. But you know as much as I do that you will be entitled to your retirement pay at some percentage ranging from 50 and above, depending on how many years you've done in the military. But keep in mind, as you do your math, your military pay is taxable. Your disability rating, depending on how the VA construes your service-connected disabilities, range from 0 to 100%, and that is non-taxable. And I'm sure many of you have 401ks and TSP and IRAs, and your spouse may have a combination of those things as well too. So you do the math for yourself, understand what the withdrawal penalties are associated with 401ks and TSPs. If you intend to get a loan from your retirement, look at the TSP. The TSP has an interest-free loan, non-penalty loan, that if you take it out before you leave the service, the advantage certainly is on your on your side. I'm not advocating that you take any money out of your retirement, but if you are inclined, I'm encouraging you to take a look at the options that are available to you and your spouse. When I left the military, and as I was planning to leave the military, I had committed to myself that I'll never get a W-2 again. I made that commitment. I told my wife, I said, honey, I am not going to get a W-2 ever again. I refuse to get a W-2. I will be creating W-2s, and I will give my workers W-2. That was the lifestyle that I want for myself, and I have done that. You also have to think about, and these are things that I had to think about, you also have to think about, what exactly do you want to do? I mean, categorically, there aren't that many options. You can go back to work, right? You can work. You can go and work, you can engage in voluntary work, meaning I'm retired, I'm not pursuing money, I just want to be active in my community, so I'm just going to do some volunteer work. And then I'm going to go to every national park in the United States. You can do those things, but you have to think about, what exactly are you going to do? Am I going to go to work? Am I going to go to a nonprofit organization? Am I going to become a business owner? Am I going to pursue a spot on a corporate board? Am I going to teach? Am I going to graduate school? What exactly am I going to do? And each of those things has their pros and cons. And you have to weigh those with your spouse and a trusted advisor. Each of them, weigh them. And if it's difficult for you to decide what to do, then I would make a recommendation, because I've done this, and I would never ask you to do something that I haven't done or wasn't prepared to do. And here's what I would tell you. Imagine you're laying in your coffin and your loved ones are reading your obituary. And they got to the place where they said, yes, he retired from the military, but they still have 15 more minutes to read. What exactly do you want them to say? That's what you have to figure out. They're going to say something. And there is a day on the calendar, knock on wood, it's not anytime soon for either of us. I don't wish that, desire that. It's not in any way, shape, and form. But it's a reality that there is a day that someone is going to funeralize us, we hope. That we get the dignity of we get the dignity of a burial. And they're going to say something about us, whether we like it or not. The opportunity that we have today, as you begin your transition or thinking about your transition, is, what exactly do you want people to say about you after the occasion where you are not able to speak for yourself? You already know some of the things they're going to say. What else would you like them to say? Let that inform your decision to choose. Let that inform your decision of what you're going to do with the next 60 or so years of your life. Okay. So let's suppose that you've decided to get a job or go to a nonprofit organization or a corporate board or something like that. Here's one thing you're going to need. You're going to need a written resume. To get a job, even to get in a position at a nonprofit or even a corporate board, you might need a bio. You might need some kind of marketing material, is what we refer to it as. If you don't have experience in writing a resume, get help. I'll be more than happy to help you. If you need assistance in writing a CV, a curriculum vitae, get help. I'll be more than happy to help you do that. The difference between a CV and a resume is this. A resume is a summary of your employment history. A CV is a summary of your academic history. So your academic awards, if you are in, the Honor Society, if you've written journal articles, the schools you attended, those type of things are on your CV. So if you're interested in becoming, an instructor, an adjunct faculty, or teaching in general, you would then put together a CV. If you're interested in pursuing employment, irrespective of its nature, then you will put together a resume. In some cases, you may need a biographical sketch. If you need help with putting together a biographical sketch, the folks here will be more than happy to help you as well. Now, If you're interested in starting a business, we would love to help you with that as well too. There's lots of material online, lots of YouTube videos that kind of break down the nuances, the legal challenge, the legal issues and legalese and those type of things. But if you're interested in talking to someone in whom you have confidence and trust, we will be more than happy to lend our expertise and experience in helping you think through what business structure might be right for you, getting incorporated, getting an EIN, getting registered in your county where you might be, where your business may be located, the advantages and disadvantages of being a home-based business being something else. We will be more than happy to talk with you through those things. I'm preparing to close just so we can have some questions. Okay. So let me just make it a little more detail about myself. So immediately after my transition, I told you before that I had committed to not getting a W-2, meaning I had committed to never sending a resume out. I wanted to be a business owner. So immediately after I left the service, I then pursued the opportunity to become a franchisee. And I owned thereafter a Cold Stone ice cream shop in Burke, Virginia. I owned and operated that for a little while. And then I realized that, okay, I didn't necessarily want to be self-employed in as much as I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And there is a big difference between the two. As a self-employed individual, that means that if I wasn't there, my business didn't operate. Whereas as an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter where you are, your business prevails. So I had some hard decisions to make. When I left the military, one of my values was being at home with my family because I had ditched these folks and I, was gone all over the place, honoring my commitment to our beloved Marine Corps. So after I retired, I had committed myself to being at home, doing homework. If my wife went to work, I wanted to have some dinner for her when she came home. And after I owned the Cold Stone, those things went away. I traded those things for the business that I owned. So obviously I had a decision to make. And the decision I made was to relinquish that business. And after I did that, I restored my commitment to my family and I transitioned into becoming a government contractor, owning and operating my own government contracting company, which has been very successful to date. And I'm glad that I did that because I told you before what my commitment was. It was not to get a W-2 again. So I had to become a student of business, especially government contracting. I had to learn what it means to be a government contractor, and I'm still learning that. I had to learn how to set up a government contracting business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So think about what you want to do. Think about what you don't want to do. Think about what membership you may have to have. Remember we talked about how do you combat loneliness? How do you combat the diminished social environment that you're going to experience? We talk about belonging to organizations, community organizations, the VFW, the American Legion, community associations, community organizations. Even in your county, go to your elected member and let them know, hey, I have some time. I would like to sit on a few committees in the county, a few commissions in the county. You can do that. They're always looking for people who have the time to volunteer, to be involved and get involved in the business of your local county. So think about those things and congratulations to you. Congratulations in reaching the milestone where you are eligible for retirement. The last time I checked, less than 10% of all service members ever get to the point of retiring. So you certainly are a high achiever. You are very accomplished. You have so much to be proud of. And I am absolutely delighted to be here with you this evening, wishing you and your family the very best as you contemplate the life that you're going to embrace ahead of you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Neville. What I'd like to do now is kind of open up to make this a little more informal. And if you are so amenable, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us who you are, service, and kind of where you are in your transition journey. So I recognize some members of TAT, so I'm gonna kind of bypass you, and if I if I butcher your name, apologies in advance, but I'll start with I see the HT2 on the iPhone and recognize the commander in the NWs. So I'll start with you, sir. One more time.
I didn't mean to scare him away.
Yeah. All right. Let's pivot here. Oh, here we go.
Hey, sir.
Hey.
So I'm at the 10-year mark, so I'll be able to make it to retirement. My thought for this was for myself, but also for future sailors, so I can be helping and providing those insights to them to help them be successful as well when they transition, when they get to that point of either separating or possibly retiring as well. So again, this was kind of an opportunity to learn and grow and develop. So I appreciate the time. I appreciate the insights gained.
Okay, yeah, thank you for joining us. Let's see here, Lorna. All right, nothing heard. Radcliffe.
No questions. Thank you. Just want to say thank you for everything. I just recently transitioned, but some of the things that y'all touched on, you touched on in the beginning, really engaged my mentality on what I need to be focusing on as I slowly reintegrate back to society, or my fault, reinvention of myself. I took notes.
Okay. Let's see here, Lloyd.
Good evening, everyone. Captain Lloyd Mack here. I'm in that final phase of ending a 30-year career. A lot of stuff that Neville touched on, I've kind of been going through personally. I officially have my retirement ceremony on the 20th of October and will be officially retired from the United States Navy 1 November. So I'm certainly in the thick of it, trying to figure out what it is that I really, really want to do when I make that transition, whether I'm trying to reinvent myself or reintegrate all the emotions that you talked about, I'm experiencing now. So I'm still trying to figure it out. So thank you for your time. Over.
All right.
I know I'm getting old now. When Lloyd Mack is retiring after 30 years, I feel real old.
You still hanging in there, Tony. Thank you, sir.
Congratulations, brother. I'm proud of you, man. Good job.
Thanks, sir.
And Lloyd, let me tell you, it's not peculiar to you to be in this place where you are and experiencing the level, uncertainty or don't have anything concrete projected for the future. It's perfectly natural, and don't rush it. Don't rush it. I read a book many years ago. I don't remember the author's name, but the thesis of the book was that, in life, there's slow decision and there are fast ones too. And when we face decision points, we have to discern whether or not this is a decision that needs to be made fast or one that needs to be made slow. And when it comes to transition is a function of the heart, because you're talking about how you're going to be remembered, what you're going to live for, where you're going to live. Those are not, calculator brain kind of activity. Those are the kind of things where you go for slow, long walks, and you may have to go for those walks several times to get the universe to speak to you about where exactly your next place is going to be. So don't feel like you need to rush that decision. Over.
Great advice. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Allison. All right.
And she brought up her camp. There she is. She's back. She can unmute now.
Nothing heard.
Allison, you're on
There she
mute.
is. There she goes.
I have it on my phone, so it had all the screens, and I was trying to get it off so I could find my mute button. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I'm Allison Cox. Thanks so much. That was a lot and exactly what I needed to hear. And now I feel like I'm a few years behind based on your timing. My husband and I both just went over 20 in May, and then just selected for next rank. So we're both kind of, he's probably going to stick around longer than me, but I'm in command now, so I still have a few years to go, and but want to keep having those meaningful jobs while I'm in, and then have the time with our girls because they're getting bigger quickly. So, but I really appreciate the mentoring and just the frank conversation.
Well, congratulations to you and your husband, and I wish you and your family the very best.
All right. And then
And Allison, if this is your first fireside,
you.
Allison, if this is your first fireside chat, remember we record all of these. So on the website, feel free to go back and look at previous editions of this as well, and you'll find lots of good information as well out there.
Thank you.
Okay, and so for the group, this doesn't have to be one and done. One of the benefits of the team is that we've got individuals in all the various industries that I mentioned. So in most cases, if we don't know the answer, we can phone a friend to expand that network. So what I want to do is kind of kick it over to the questions that we see in the chat. And then with any time remaining, see if the group has any questions for you. So first one is going to be, what attracted you to pursue AI, and then the doctorate?
Thank you for the question, Donald, and for the person who wrote the question in the chat. Thank you both. I was attracted to AI because it is my view that if you are going to pursue a professional degree, that you should do so with one word in mind, and that word is relevance. Relevance in the context of, ask yourself, how long is it going to take for you to earn the degree? And if it's going to take you 5 years to earn the degree, then you really have to answer the question about relevance 5 years from where you're standing today. And then you might want to go even further to see, okay, if my education is going to be relevant 5 years from now, then what is the shelf life of my relevance? How long will my education continue to be relevant? And when you do the math or you do the assessment of AI, most reasonable people will tell you that in Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution, AI characterizes, for the most part, Industry 4.0. So if you're going to, and in my case, when I thought about pursuing a PhD, I thought about relevance. I wanted to be relevant. I also examined where vulnerable populations are going to be. Where can we add the most value? The way in which AI is positioned today, it appears as though, and the literature supports this, vulnerable populations are going to become more vulnerable. The disparity that characterizes the haves from the have-nots will be exacerbated. So for someone like me, I want to be able, and I want my education to position me to make the case to diminish the divide between the haves and the have-not, and help people understand how to relate to vulnerable populations. And I can give you many examples of vulnerable populations, be it women, be it people of color, especially in technology jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So my calculus was really looking at the social fabric of our society 15, 20 years down the road, and trying to position myself at the point of friction, transition, and change. Over.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And one more question. So what would be the most significant counsel you would give to a service member who is unsure about leaving?
Well, leaving the military is not for, you shouldn't leave the military unless you are sure that that is what you want to do. The military has a lot of benefits. The society that we live in values military service. And if you're going to leave the military, you should do so in a way that is informed. The military is not for everyone. The grace that God may have put on someone to be in the military may have been lifted, and the Creator may want that person to do something else. And I wouldn't get in the middle of that. I know many people who would tell you, you know, I don't feel the way I do. My values have evolved, and they're no longer congruent with those of the institution. The environment that exists outside of the military certainly has implications for the experience that people have in the military. So, you know, leaving the military, joining the military, those are personal decisions. But I would encourage anyone who is thinking about leaving the military to really think about why exactly do you think you need to leave the military? You know, if you are leaving the military because you're retiring, that is a different context for leaving the military. But if you are leaving the military prior to retirement, I would want to know where you are in your military career. What work do you do? Would you be open to doing something else? We would definitely have to explore what the dynamics are that is propelling the individual to contemplate leaving the military. So my advice for anyone leaving the military succinctly is find someone who is knowledgeable about the military, someone who has experienced the military, not necessarily in silo, but someone who truly has a broad military experience, and consult with them before making your decision. The decision belongs to you, but at minimum, let someone who has experienced the military really and truly explore with you the timing of you leaving the military and the reasons for you leaving the military. Over.
Okay. So with the few minutes remaining, if anyone else has any questions, you can place those in the chat or come off mute.
Neville, great to see you again, my friend. For those
Oh
of you
my
that don't
goodness.
know, Neville was my master at arms for the organization during my presidency time. So it's always great to see you coming back and continuing to support the organization. It's guys like you, and I'd say that cadre of folks that I had the pleasure to lead on the national board during that time period is pretty impressive. I mean, Dave is heading towards being a general in the Marine Corps these days, and once again, I just appreciate you continuing to serve. And you know, like I said, the fireside chats are fireside. I mean, we're a family. We're all, you know, we don't have to use all the pretty words that we sometimes hear. And when you get down to it, the piece I'd like to hear you talk about is people leave the military for different reasons. And in some cases, it's not because they wanted to leave, it's because they didn't perform well enough to stay. So what advice do you have to those transitioning service members who have run out of their options in the military and now they have to leave and find a second career prior to retirement eligibility in many cases?
Well, that is a great question. And Tony, it's always good to see you. Thank you for your leadership. The NNOA certainly prospered under your leadership. I learned a tremendous amount from you. And anytime I'm in your presence, I always feel like one of your favorite students. So thank you always for your invariable counsel. Yes, the military has a policy, was it up or out? And it's not just the military. So people have the tendency to think that, you know, when they're experiencing certain kinds of things, They think they're being persecuted. They think that their burden is the heaviest one. I always try to get to the psychology of what exactly we're experiencing. The Department of State has the same policy. DHS has the same policy. Performance is in the eyes of the beholder, okay? If someone tells you or documents that your performance is substandard, that is not necessarily an indictment on you. Just go back and look at history, which is replete with cases of men and women who people thought would never amount to anything. And those same individuals have excelled and propelled to the top of industries, to the top of our societies. So if someone documents that your performance is substandard and their documentation, maybe along with others, put you in a place where you have to make a decision, or the institution has made a decision for you, don't internalize that as the end of you. It's
Right.
not. It
Right.
absolutely is not. What someone says about you is not as important as what you say about yourself. You literally get the last word about who you are, what your potential is, and what you're capable of. Now, any sober student of life, if someone levies a criticism against them, whether in private or public, you would take the time to evaluate the merits of the allegations levied against you. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll go in there and you say, well, you know, maybe I give Anthony Barnes or Tony Barnes some reason for the things that he has said about me. And you may not have to accept that to him, but don't be complacent. Don't take for granted the viewpoint of another person. You don't have to internalize it, but in the privacy of your existence, examine it to see if there are kernels of truth. And if there are, address those. Address them. Take the time, have the courage, and say, you know what? I didn't really like the way this was served to me, but I really needed this meal.
I think you're exactly right. That's great advice. And I think if we did a little bit of research, we'll find that there are C-suites across America littered with failure to select naval officers, Army officers, and Air Force officers who didn't make 04 or 05 or whatever, and they're in corporate America just killing it. So
you couldn't be more right. Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs, I think you all remember, he founded Apple. That same company fired him.
Mhm.
Apple fired Steve Jobs. And it was after Steve Jobs was fired from Apple that his genius really unfolded, to the point where Apple purchased the company that he founded, Pixar. Remember Pixar that created Toy Story, the most successful animation movie? It wasn't until then Apple purchased the company that he founded and rehired him. Today, Apple is what it is because of Steve Jobs. And that's just one example. But if someone levies the credit, if you have to leave before retirement because of performance-related issue, do two things. Take a sober look at the criticism that has been levied against you to see if there are elements of truth in there, and embrace it. And use it as fertilizer for your 2.0. And if there are no elements of truth, then remember that you're not the first person in the history of the world that has ever had criticism levied against him or her unjustifiably. And that too is okay. Just remember, there is a 2.0 you that you get to fashion in your own image and likeness. And you have the power to do that. Thank you so much for that question.
Thanks for your answer. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So I will give you the last word as we close out. First, I'd like to, on behalf of the team, thank you for agreeing to present to us this evening. And I took some good notes. I found a lot of what you said helpful, meaningful, and I can basically use that as well to date. For the group, our next fireside chat right now scheduled for 14 November. Always looking for a speaker. So phone a friend, let me know. But I'll turn over you, Neville, to close us out.
Well, I'll be very brief. As I said at the onset, I am deeply grateful to the entire team assembled here for the privilege to share the occasion with you today. I learned a tremendous amount from you. I learned about the things that are important to you. I learned about the mission, vision, and values of this team, why it is that transition is such an important thing. The questions that were asked this evening were very informative. They caused me to reflect on the things that I have said, the way I think about transition, and to think about you and your welfare and your family as well too. So I am deeply grateful for the privilege. Transition is a real thing. You're doing the right thing if you are here. You are absolutely doing the right thing. You're learning, you're getting information, even if it's not your turn to drop your transition paper, your retirement papers. The process truly begins about 5 years to the left of your transition date, your retirement date. So you are definitely smarter than I have ever been. Thank you for being here and sharing the occasion. When you come back, bring 5 people with you. Bring 10 people with you. Let them know that there is a place where we all come to share. This is a communal space. This is a public space. And there are many people here. It's my this occasion was mine to share my point of view, but make no mistake, I am well aware of the wealth and breadth of knowledge that is resident in this forum. Bring your friends. I will be sure to be back, and I will make sure the people that I know are aware of the opportunity to learn and share in this space. Thank you all for the privilege. I sincerely appreciate you all, and good luck.
Outstanding.
Thank you, Neville.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, Mike, you can stop recording. Now we're going to do outtake.